The Supreme Court of Nigeria is meant to make the judgment today, so you can call it a D-Day for about 8 governors that will get to know their fate, whether they will be sacked as governors of their state or not. And we are looking at that of Lagos State, which the court has reaffirmed his election as the governor of Lagos State. We also have that of Bauchi State. We also have that of Kano State, as well as Zamfara. And you know, we had the way we do it on the show here, where we open up the, talking about, you can drop your comment on Facebook, on YouTube, and then we just want to know your own reaction. How is the body language? I mean, we've seen a lot of videos for that of Kano State, so we just want to see how the body language is. You can drop your comment on that story, and then we'll also be looking at, talking about security and also education, the way we always do it here on the program. I'm Sela Elisha Dasham. I'll be doing the program with Rachel Tansy. Good afternoon, Rachel.
Afternoon, sir.
All right, it's more like us continuing our conversation from what we started in the morning. And we'd love to start with that of the lawyers in Lagos State. Yesterday, they took it to the street to actually protest brutality of the police. And the moment I heard that, Rachel, I just couldn't help but cast my mind back to the hashtag answers that we had, in as much as it started in one part of the country, but then before realizing it was national. Almost every state was actually showing their own grievances, in as much as it was being tagged hashtag answers, but a lot of things were actually on that hashtag answers. And here we're saying that, yesterday lawyers actually took to the street because they were not happy. One of their colleagues was being maltreated by the police, and then it was being led by the son, talking about Falana, and they were all expressing their grievances. They were all dressed in black. Of course, I know that's the color for law, but then they were out there trying to show that what, we're not happy with the way police are treating us. I think I also saw today there was also an outdoor brutality in Borno State, but this time around it's all about the army. And then we also saw whereby there was a clash between the army and the police. And then you tend to ask, how is the recruitment or the training for these security bodies? Because it's expected that they know where their jurisdiction starts and when it ends, and then where you're supposed to allow civilians to actually do right. And I remember recall you saying the fact that, why should I have a police actually threatening a civilian that is without anything to protect itself? Why point a gun? No wonder when you even go to some of our orientation camp for NYSC, for all the military men that are there, not one of them will you see holding their maybe their weapons, except those who are by the maybe gates and all of that. But those who mingle with the core members, you don't see them with anything. Why? Because you are dealing with civilians, so you need to treat them in a different way whatsoever. But then looking at the fact that lawyers have taken it to the street, then that it's a serious case, and I hope that the IGP of police will call the policemen to order, so we don't have a reputation of these things coming up again.
Stella, if there's one thing that has remained constant in Nigeria, is the fact that law enforcement officers don't know how to handle civilians. And we can take it as far back. We're talking about police brutality here, but I remember when we started having the surge in insecurity in the country, the insurgency, and we had a lot of soldiers, for example, at checkpoints on our roads. We had them in the cities, we had them everywhere. There was a lot of brutality coming from soldiers at that time. You must have witnessed one brutality, one embarrassment, one unnecessary misconduct or behavior coming from soldiers. They treat you as if you're in the barrack and you're a subordinate or something like that. This has been the nature of law enforcement officers in this country. They do not know how to handle civilians. Now we can bring it down. Perhaps, let's say, for soldiers, they had to be with civilians when usually their job is not supposed to be with civilians. They're not supposed to be handling. So perhaps, let's say, we can excuse them and say they don't have proper training concerning how to handle civilians. They are meant to be somewhere fighting wars and just dealing with hardened criminals and all of that. But let's bring it back to our law enforcement officers, police, precisely. These are people who by training, they are supposed to deal with civilians by nature, because they are for civilians, purely civilians. But yet they have showed us over time that, our training is not good enough because of the way they keep handling civilians, and lawyers are also civilians. And we've seen that it hasn't gone anywhere. Maybe the hashtag NSAS has ended, perhaps. We see a little bit of it left, right, center, but that massive protest is not out there. But police brutality haven't stopped yet, and it's important for us to keep talking about it, because maybe we were looking at students, maybe we were looking at people being harassed. Now we are seeing that they have moved now to lawyers in Lagos State. And when you hear the incident, it's just always about my word against your word. For this case, precisely concerning what happened with the lawyer when he went to bail his client and then ended up being detained, locked up for 2 days together with the client, and you wonder, I just become a criminal because I went to bail my client out of the court, and then because this person said so, is my word against your word, and all of that. What are your book of conduct saying concerning how to handle certain case like that? Are you supposed to lock him up? There should be a fine. If you're saying, okay, he went against the law and he's supposed to do something like that, is that a case? Is that the type of case worth being locked, or just sanctioning the person, or giving him what he's supposed to pay, a fee or something like that, and we move? I mean, what do you guys get trained for? I'm asking the Nigerian police now precisely. How are you just breaking every rules? And it looks like it's what you say stands regarding enforcing the law. And we know very well that it's not supposed to be like that. So I feel for me that it's a good thing that we have lawyers stepping out and protesting. And then this is also still a wake-up call that, you know what, police brutality has not stopped. And we need to keep talking about it. And if they need to be retrained, Sele, go through another training for them to know how to handle civilians. And then secondly, we also need to know what their books are saying concerning when you do a certain thing. What is the punishment? What is the penalty? What am I supposed to do? So that I, as a common man, a civilian, know that, okay, if I do this, this is what I should expect from a police officer. Any other thing other than that is misconduct from the police officer, and therefore he should answer to it, because this is also criminal for you to treat people wrongly when you are not supposed to, depending on the circumstances or the scenario. So I just hope that there's truly a cleanup in it when it comes to treatment of police to civilians, and let them just have another new training to refresh their minds in case they
possibly they have actually forgotten what the books say about certain things and how to treat civilians, just like you said. And each time I see a story like this, Rachel, you need to go on social media once in a while, and then you get to hear people's testimony or people's awful experience with the police, and you wonder, why is that? You made mention something in the morning where you said, I mean, we all grew up hearing that police is your friend, but I mean, is that the case? We hear that bail is free, but it has never been free. If I just go to maybe any of the police stations, then you want to make maybe a statement about this is what happened, you'll be told that there are no papers, Rachel, so you need to pay. So there are certain things that are becoming out of the norm. These are the way things are supposed to be, but that is not what we are seeing. And I keep mentioning the fact that a number of people have actually lost their life or lost a loved one. Why? Because of certain mishandlement coming from the police force. And you know, these are lawyers, like for now, these are lawyers that are supposed to help you to persecute law offenders. And they are also coming after them. So what now happened? What kind of system are we practicing? So I think I'm really in support of when you said there should be a cleaning. There should be maybe a reminder. I mean, it's the beginning of a lot of agencies, cooperative actually having workshops. So I think this should be a time for a lot of people to revisit the books again, go back to your bylaws, know the rules, the laws, what is expected and all of that. And I think with that, we'll not be seeing repetition. So I hope that this is not just one of those protests that will come and go. Rather, the IGP of police should take it up from there so that we don't see any casualties eventually again, because the police did not do what they are supposed to do. Now we see that today is actually a judgment day. I mean, everywhere right now, every body's finger is crossed, especially for the 8 states that were actually looking up to the Supreme Court to actually uphold their judgment or to sack certain governors. I made mention, I mean, with some of the states that will be in the Supreme Court. We have that of Bauchi, we had Zamfara, Kanu, Lagos, and about 4 other states as well. And we say that they've already given the judgment for some of these states. Now, it is important for us to say that, I mean, it seems some people are happy, some people are not happy, because some of the things that the appeal court actually said that, you know what, this is what we feel that, I mean, most of the cases we saw that were being brought to the Supreme Court are mostly on pre-election matters, things that should be handled before the election. And then you wonder, why didn't INEC see this thing? And then we saw, like, for example, that of Kano State, about over 100 votes were being deducted, and whose fault was that? Bringing out certain cases to say that, you know what, this candidate was not a candidate in this party as of the time of election. These are things that INEC should have checked. These are things that the party should have checked. I mean, if you're having an opposition, you should be able to be ahead of the opposition to know certain rules and laws. But we see that these are some of the cases that were being brought to the Supreme Court, and sometimes you can't help but imagine or to say that, you know what, you're wasting the time of the Supreme Court. We have better things to actually look into. So why do we keep having cases or things that a particular body should have looked into, and then right now you are stressing the Supreme Court? Permit me to use that word, is stress, because it's not taking the Supreme Court up to 30 minutes or 1 hour to say, you know what, this case do not, I mean, doesn't make sense. We should discard it and let governance rule and not politics, because it looks more like, I mean, for all of these cases, it's more of politics than governance. But then we're seeing that, I mean, there are a lot of joy and happiness in various states, and then definitely there'll be mixed reaction coming from other people as well.
So I honestly pray, hope, and wish that what happened in 2023 will not repeat itself 2027 whatsoever. This up and down is so uncalled for, unnecessary, and we will never stop emphasizing the fact that this is the outcome of when a certain body sleep on their duty and don't do the needful, and the Nigerians just have to pay for it this way and go through this whole stress. Stress being that politics is still the order of the day, when we're supposed to have been facing the businesses in our state and looking at the way forward and growing. Barrister Caleb Mufang of Plateau State should have been here on the plateau, focusing on what should happen in Bokov State, looking at the IDP, you know, strategizing, facing what is going on in Plateau, rather than back and forth concerning whether he is still going to have his position or not. This is the problem, and I just hope that we don't see it or witness it again in 2027. I am hopeful that, other than a peace accord, perhaps these parties will be like very patriotic, or, you know, have sportsmanship, like the spirit of sportsmanship, where you shake whoever wins at the end of the day, and then you move, rather than all of these petitions. So come 2027, let's just see politicians with good spirit that says, okay, the number says this, regardless of what we feel, Sele, let's move, because we need governance to thrive. You understand? We just need to grow. And this is what I'm looking for. And now, coming down to the order of the day, what is happening today? I mean, Lagos, I mean, it's easy for you to have predicted that,
of course, someone
will still remain in his position. And then for Kano too, it was a tough one. It's one of those states that have a lot of tension, like, are we going to see something different? And then we saw that the governor is not going to be sacked eventually. And for Zamfara State, even despite with some of the issues, but I keep saying it's an issue of number. It is an issue of number. Certain things, we shouldn't just allow it to flow and go the way it is. The same thing we can say for Plateau is an issue of number, but for some reason we got to the Supreme Court. I believe that if for the issue of Plateau, is the appeal court that failed Plateau State, wouldn't have been in the Supreme Court in the first place, because it's pre-election issues. And when it came to election, we have numbers showing that this person clearly won. And all of that. And then we are seeing that, okay, you know what, the appeal court is the reason we are at the Supreme Court level whatsoever. And then for every other state, but then it leaves us in the position, Sele, where despite coming out to vote in our numbers, we just have a number of nothing more than, I don't think they're up to 10 judges, 6, 7 judges deciding for
the fate of millions of
citizens in a state. So yes, I'll just keep saying what I started saying, that I pray that this doesn't repeat itself in 2027. And congratulations to the governors that don't have to get sacked. We'll just have to wait and see what is the outcome for the remaining governors.
Rachel, I'd like to take this from another angle, is the fact that even though we mentioned that indirectly or directly, is the fact that, I mean, from what we're seeing clearly, I think there is a need for this review again of our electoral laws. I mean, we should have a clear interpretation of things that should make it to court and things that shouldn't make it to court.
Yes.
I mean, like part of the pre-election matters that we're bringing here, I mean, these are things that you should have handled.
Yes.
These are things that you should see. This party, do they have structure or not? If they do not have, then you could actually disqualify them from the very beginning and not to allow them to go ahead. There was sale of tickets. Nobody said anything. There was primaries. Nobody said anything. Conventions came. Nobody said anything till this point where we had even delegates. And I remember as of that time, we had the issue of memes going all around delegates to the fact that they said, if you ask a small child, what do you want to be in future? I want to be delegate. It got to that point. And then even during the election, I mean, we actually either applauded the INEC at one point or the other, because we saw during the presidential election, I mean, they didn't do what they were supposed to do. Beavers were not working. Some things that should have been done well, uploading of results did not go as expected. We even saw some of the people coming out from various parties to say, you know what, I'm not in agreement. You promised us electronic transmission. Here we are seeing manual way of doing things. Why are you doing that? And then later on we're seeing the court saying that INEC is under no obligation whatsoever. And you ask the question, I mean, then why did we have to give you that huge amount of money if you are not mandated to do that? Your other obligation, you get it, Rachel. So I'm hoping we have a clear interpretation, and that is where I keep going back to that town hall meeting where we had a former chairman. We had a number of people, I mean, representative from the House of Reps, Senate. They were all there to say, you know what, there is a need for reform. We need to have clear understanding so that certain parties know what they are getting themselves involved. We should not see where a candidate is having over 500 votes and then you remove like 100 votes. So that is to say, you're disenfranchising over 100 people. So I'm hoping that, just like you said, we shouldn't see a repeat. We already have an election this year, Edo State. So this will be another way to see if INEC will prove themselves to Nigerians to say, you know what, we know what our responsibility is. And we do not want to stress the judicial system. There are other things on ground that they should be focused on, rather than having issues that are new. The tribunal and the high courts and the appeal courts should have actually handled that while we having it going to the Supreme Court. So right now, our fingers are crossed. We just hope that with all of the things that are happening, INEC is actually taking lessons. Yesterday, you and I talked about the fact that they have already started recruiting observers, and you said hope they will be willing to take all of these lessons that the observers will tell them, you know what, rather than saying, you know, we do not regard what you're saying. If you need observers, then you should be able to take whatever feedback they bring to you to tell you know what, you didn't do this right. So just like you said, we have to congratulate the governors that have actually, you know, retained their seat, and we hope that we'll see development and growth in these various states, rather than we see them actually being concerned about themselves and not being concerned about the indigents of their state. Thank you, Rachel, for doing this with me. And thank you also to our viewers for keeping the day with us on Nigeria Now. Until we come next week, to have a blessed weekend ahead.